Hello and welcome once again to episode 123 of Code Completion. We are a group of iOS developers and educators helping to share what we love most about development, Apple technology, and completing your code. My name is Dimitri and I'll be your host once again for this episode, and I'm joined today by my fellow completionist, Spencer.
Hey there.
So we have a bit of a new segment, and I hope we can do this semi-regularly. Of course, it depends on Apple. But I decided to call it HIG Bits because Apple has updated their HIG. And since they have release notes for their HIG, it's easy to keep track of. So you just need someone to tell you when it gets updated. And thankfully, someone did that for us, and we are doing that for you.
Yeah. So we've got two new ones. One of them is in the design section I don't know if that everything's in the design section. I don't know. Anyway, I love the release notes though. It says February 27th, 2023, new page, period. That's it. So this is brand new.
It's all new.
Great. Yeah. But it's on writing, and it's kind of the sub headline of it is the words you choose within your app are an essential part of its user experience. And kind of going from like firsthand experience of there was a feature I was working on in my day job where they gave me a basic design, but I sort of had to come up with a copy for explaining what the feature did. And there were a couple places where alerts would pop up, or the messaging for deleting and stuff, and the copy had to be sort of edited after the fact, after I had written it, to sort of be more in line with what the rest of the messaging of the rest of our app it was, just so it's consistent. And that's kind of what it's talking about here, is trying to like determine your app's voice. Is it, a fun app? Is it a game? Do you want to, basically just like, what is your audience, and what would your audience expect to be sort of like the correct way of speaking to you? Mm-hmm. From the app, right? Like it mentions, like if it's a banking app, you want to convey trust and stability type of thing. Ours, we wanted it to be professional and not I think one of the loading screens that I wrote, it said like, hang tight, we're loading whatever, right? And it's like, maybe not. So
feels more like a toy than a professional tool, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that was, and I would like to say it was placeholder. I thought it was fine, but obviously it wasn't, and that's fine. So just goes into a couple things about, best practices for that, trying to figure out your voice, language patterns, like if you are, so like talk in first or second person. So like in every place, say like my favorites, my whatever, or your saved items, your favorites, whatever, so that it's consistent. So I think it's got some really good pointers there.
Yeah, and the great part about this guide is it's not being prescriptive of like only using one way of doing something. Like you don't have to use continue on every page, or you don't have to use next on every page. As long as you're consistent, you don't say continue next kind of thing, then it lends your app more credibility as something that's been put together professionally. And that tends to give people confidence that they would want to pay for it at the end of the day. My favorite thing that they did end up calling out here has to do with error messages. The dreaded "oops" message. Like a lot of apps tend to like treat error messages as something that nobody can do anything about. Apple included, which is the best part of this. Is something went wrong. That's great, Apple. Lots or better, just don't show an error message when things are not going well, and then that's an even better solution. But here it gives an example of that password is too short isn't as helpful as choose a password of at least 8 characters. And I think that way of thinking deserves a different way of thinking throughout your entire app to really kind of nail how things are used. And the only thing I would expand here is, like, for error messages, make sure that every error message you have is unique, because that's going to be your best bet as to finding where it occurs when a user is ambiguous and does not tell you, how they got somewhere, or they just, I saw an error message that said this, here's a screenshot. Like that, if it's unique, then you can do a string search in your project for it, and that is a great way of finding exactly where it is. Also, like, include diagnostics that the user can take action on.
Right.
Is a great way that like the user themselves might be able to fix the problem. Like if your app gets big enough where enough people are using it, there's probably going to be a Reddit somewhere where enough people have congregated to kind of share knowledge about how your app works. And if there is an error message that maybe you as a developer like are doing the best thing you can by showing that error message, right? And a user's confused. Well, if they search Google and it shows up on a Reddit post, maybe you can answer it there once, and then you're not going to be getting a whole bunch of support inquiries as a result of that. So that those kinds of things can help. This whole section in general is great, and definitely suggests reading it along with the rest of the HIG. But there is one more change that happened to the HIG, and that is the tap to pay page got improved. I'm not too sure how it got improved, but as a reminder, tap to pay is this new thing that Apple totally did not add under pressure that allows other apps to accept payments via the NFC chip directly in the app. Over in the US, that sounds like a thing that Square would only use, but it turns out Wix also just added support like last week or this week. I didn't know Wix was a thing, but they are now a thing because it's significant enough that someone else other than Square probably implemented something like this. So that's cool. But yeah.
Yeah. A little less interesting to me than the writing page, but
just a tad.
The HIG is getting updated, and that's kind of, I guess, the best part about this is we know that in some form or another, whether it's a lot or not, the HIG is being updated and sort of maintained. So that's nice. But you know what else needs to be maintained is AI created code, because it's less secure. Who would have guessed? That's crazy
Joyful.
to me. Yeah.
Yeah, so it turns out if you are heavily now dependent on what's the GitHub supplied one? Copilot?
Copilot,
not CodePilot. But if you are heavily dependent on that, it turns out the code you write is guaranteed to be a little more shittier than people who aren't dependent on that. And this has been scienced, so you know it's true. Kidding aside, someone did a legitimate study, and they compared two groups. One group that had access to a coding assistant and one group that did not have access to a coding assistant. So whether or not they used it, the group that had access to the coding assistant wrote less secure code that had more security vulnerabilities, and it had more problems in general. And they were more confident about the code they wrote, thinking it was better. Let that be a warning. As with most things, the less you know, turns out the more confident you are. I forget what that effect is called. The Dunning-Kruger effect.
The Dunning-Kruger, yeah.
Yeah. So the less you know, the more confident you are that you know everything, which is always amazing. But it turns out that the more you know, the less confident you get. Because you start to see like, oh, there's so much out there, and then I guess at a certain point you've reached the maximum of like you know really a lot, and you're like, I know nothing, despite actually knowing everything, and it loops around. I don't know how that works.
Yeah.
There's an Ouroboros somewhere in there, and Tears of the Kingdom, but
oh, there we go.
there we go. It's tying it in.
Yep.
But that turns out to be something that you absolutely need to be careful of when you are using tooling that is very confident about itself despite not knowing what confidence is. So keep in mind whenever you do use AIs, whether it's via ChatGPT or whether it's via Copilot, you can potentially get in big trouble by using that and being confident with the results that it's giving you. I think this comes from like wanting to trust like other people, like in general, like this is a basal instinct. Like if someone helps you do something, you're more likely to trust them outright. And that works when you get help from someone who can be trustworthy, right? But it doesn't work when the person that's helping you has no like uh, they
Humanity.
have no reputation for like doing
Oh,
always the
sure.
right thing and making sure that everything is correct. So do keep that in mind that AI is very confident about the gibberish that it spews, and that's just part of the world we're in, and it's going to change rapidly from this point forward. Hopefully, to the point where we have AIs that are legitimately confident about the stats that they're sharing. But even if we have those, we're still going to have the not so good AIs left around vestigially around our tools and our devices that have not gotten updated. So just keep that in mind. From today onwards, we are going to have to live with this kind of technology, and it might make us worse for it.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like a not quite a middle ground in the abstract. It kind of has an interesting part where it says, furthermore, we find that the participants who trusted the AI less and engaged more with the language and format of their prompts, so like rephrasing, adjusting temperature, provided code with fewer security vulnerabilities. So like Dimitri was talking about, trusting it less and saying like, maybe that doesn't seem right. Maybe I need to ask it in a different way. Maybe the AI is completely possible, or it's completely able to get a good solution, but maybe you didn't ask it the right question or something. But not trusting the AI to give you the right response the first time, I suppose. And again, that comes back to that Dunning-Kruger effect where you look at the code and you're like, yeah, I know this isn't right. I'm almost positive. Let's try something else. So that's sort of like, I'm sure we'll get to a future where the AI is what we will rely on. But like Dimitri said, we're definitely not there. So yeah, interesting that someone did like a full, you know, actual scientific study on this, like a user study, and sort of it is empirically more or less saying what we've been saying and what many people
Mm-hmm.
are saying, that it's very cool, super not ready. I've used chat GPT just to like test things, and it does okay, but you definitely, like, if you know more or less the realm you're writing in, and if it's anything more than some basic code that's probably sitting on GitHub, it's probably not going to work for you. So we need a little bit more time for it to cook.
Yeah. And it definitely is impressive what it is able to do. Like you can
Yeah.
ask it to like write the basics of an app and it will do that.
Yeah.
Most of it might be correct and like some parts of it might like need some adjusting. But do approach it with a skeptical mind, right? Don't outright trust it. Learn to like think critically of what it is giving you and what you can trust and what you have to like be more perceptive of, because it is absolutely a tool at the end of the day. It's kind of like self-driving where it feels like, oh, it can basically do what I need it to do, therefore I'm going to turn my entire brain off and not pay attention to the road anymore,
Yeah.
because that's what we tend to do as humans, because we learn, oh, I can rely on this thing to do it most of the time, except with self-driving cars that turns out to be lethal if the wrong thing happens. With most of the code that we write, thankfully, it's not a big deal. But security
Yeah.
vulnerabilities are a big deal, right?
Yes,
So we don't
exactly.
want to necessarily expose our users to things that we could have easily prevented by keeping a sharper eye. I guess as a final point on this, if you do want to learn to think critically, and to learn to look at these things with a skeptical eye, there's a great podcast called The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe that explores this ad nauseum. And it's a legitimately good source of like daily science news, which is why I love to listen to it. But sprinkled in with all that science news is how to think critically, how to evaluate BS when you see it, and how to approach things like AI with the grains of salt that you need to not shoot yourself in the foot in that same process, right?
Nice. That's really cool. I've not heard of that podcast. I will most definitely check it out.
On to the next topic. We've been talking a bit about macros coming to Swift lately, and it turns out we are starting to see like real use cases coming quickly of what macros can do for Swift. And the first one that's kind of being pitched as a solution for the every person problem of writing option sets is kind of cool looking.
Yeah, it's really cool. It significantly decreases the amount of boilerplate that you have to write, and I think the thing with option sets is like it mentions in the I'm just going to take from the proposal it involves some fiddly boilerplate, which is exactly right because you're dealing with um, bitmaps or bit shifts, one
Yep.
of the two. I don't know. So
Lots
it
of bit
like they
magic.
mention like yeah that kind of stuff is like honestly I don't understand it quite a ton, but it says it's pretty repeatable, but it's easily you're easily able to accidentally repeat the bit shift and not change that. It lists a couple ways that you can kind of mess it up, and so the proposed solution for it is just having this add option set makes it way nicer where you just make like an enum and you have the cases and like that's it. You don't, and it will automatically do the bit shifting for you, which is huge. We have I was just checking in the Jobby Jobs app, and most of our option sets are in Objective C, but we have some that are like literally 30 options long. So, and there have been times where I've had to add options, and it's you have to run through and make sure you're not copying the same number that you're shifting. So, definitely one that like would be super cool. Be nice to move a lot of our option sets to Swift, so we could benefit from this new macro. So yeah, I think it's a really good idea. It
Yeah,
mentions
option sets.
also like, oh sorry, go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna say option sets are one of those things in Swift that are nicer to use, like once they've been set up for you. But boy, are they finicky to like set up, and not
Yeah.
just from the bit shifts, but also making sure you implement all the conformances to do all the intersections and stuff like that. Like
Hmm.
it's not the worst, but it's not as magical as writing an enum. And we all wish it were as magical as writing an enum, and this is what the macro does, which is wonderful.
Yep. And it mentions like there's the alternative of just adding native support for option sets, but it kind of says there's no real benefit um, other than like slightly decreasing the verbosity. So it seems like to me, and I agree with this, and maybe you have a different opinion, but it seems like a macro is like a perfect use for this because that's probably much easier to get into and sort of implemented and accept. I don't know, seems easier than writing sort of true native support instead of just having a macro write it for you.
Especially if the Swift team only has to write how to make macros work, and then anyone can write these, and anyone can add them to the system, even to Swift itself. Like this is being proposed as a native like uh, uh, addition to the Swift standard library, which means that you will just be able to make option sets really easily in all of your code, no matter
Yeah.
like where it's being deployed or to which version of macOS or iOS. So that is where macros are magical, is because it does allow anyone to kind of write a mini compiler to do the dirty work for them without needing to know how to write a compiler, which, to be
Right.
clear, is getting easier. Like more and more of the compiler is being rewritten in Swift rather than C++, which is going to make it easier to reason about Swift and make things better down the line. So, if anything, like this opens the door to conversation where we might decide, hey, in Swift 7, yeah, let's go ahead and make option set a native thing. And then it
Yeah.
can be, right? But until then, this is like a very good solution that gets us 95% of the way there without too much more work that really needs to be done other than to make it look nicer. next on our agenda is to talk a little bit about TweetBot and Twitterific. And as you might have heard, Twitter has devolved into a bunch of 404s and 500 errors this morning as we record.
Yeah.
It turns out the whole developer.twitter.com page just kind of melted. But that is irrelevant because TweetBot and Twitterific, which were heavily dependent on the Twitter API, can no longer work. And that means that anyone who's subscribed to it is essentially going to get their money back thanks to Apple refunding everyone. Now, the details of this are a bit unclear as far as how it works, but I want to encourage everyone to go re-download if you have deleted or open TweetBot and Twitterific, and especially if you've bought a subscription through them, go ahead and ask for I don't need a refund, because you don't. Long story short, you don't, and many people are not going to do that, and the companies behind TweetBot and Twitterific are likely going to hemorrhage quite a bit because of this. So this will be helping them out and making sure that if you like the other apps that these companies make, like maybe Ivory, you can go ahead and continue using Ivory because it will mean that the developers will continue being able to develop it without needing to take out a new mortgage. So yeah, that's something to consider. I think in TweetBot you can move your subscription over to Ivory, which is a very neat thing.
Yeah, you can.
I chose not to do it. I just chose to tell them I don't need a refund. But that is a responsibility that we as users unfortunately need to take. Now, as Michael Tsai pointed out, I have no idea what the mechanism behind all of this is. I would assume if an app just kind of stops working, Apple doesn't really care, and that's that. Individual users can go and ask for a prorated refund of the remainder of their subscription, and I think Apple will just give it to them. But I don't know why these two apps, maybe they approached Apple and they asked, hey, can we give refunds to our users? And two, maybe Apple said yes, but you need to let people know which ones want it and which ones explicitly want to opt out of the refund process. So maybe that's what they're doing. And maybe it's just a super manual process that's going on to support this. I don't really know.
Yeah, it's interesting. And Apple is going to pay its 30 or 15% of whatever the subscription is. So there has to be some coordination there, I would assume. But it is interesting that they're doing it this way. I think, like Dimitri said, the biggest thing is I don't need the refund, right? It's I was paying for TweetBot with a monthly subscription. So, and it said you have X amount of days left on your subscription. It was 2 or 3 days. So I literally would have got 25 cents. Do I need those 25 cents? No. Do they? More than me, probably. So that didn't really make any sense not to do that. And I already have an Ivory subscription. So I didn't need to transfer it over or anything. So
you didn't want the 3 extra days?
No, that's all good. It's all good, man.
Yeah, I didn't want to make things more complicated because it feels like asking to transfer, even though I already paid for the Ivory subscription. It felt like it would be I don't know how the developers would have worked that out because they don't get to tell Apple, hey, pause the subscription. It just happens. Yeah. So it would have been weird for certain. Maybe I should click it just to see what would happen. Because I'm sure from their point of view, it counts as a I don't need a refund as well. Sure. So there's that. But maybe it's just going to be part of a balance once I ever stop paying for Ivory. That will get used. Who knows? It's really up to them to implement it however they want. But you can't do that for Twitterific. So give love to the folks behind Twitterific who invented the word tweet. They
Exactly.
made Twitter what it is, for all intents and purposes. So they got relatively nothing out of that in the many years that have come to this point. And as a result of these mass refunds, they are likely needing to shell out a whole lot of money for revenue that didn't happen yet. Like if someone subscribed for an entire year a month ago, then Twitter, if it got 12 months worth of revenue at that time of subscription,
Right.
and that's something that they may not be able to, like, they may have already used that revenue to continue developing that and
Yeah.
other apps, because development is expensive. So that might not exist anymore. And needing to take care of that, which they likely will, like, do the right thing because they're not shit turds, will mean that, like, they may need to take out a whole bunch of loans. Like, I remember there were a few people that were doing an iOS development conference, and basically, due to COVID and due to them
Oh
basically
yeah.
using their own money to make sure that everything was reserved and all that, they literally had to take out like a new mortgage to help pay for all of that. And
That's
that's really
crazy.
unfortunate when people are just kind of doing it for the community, and doing it to make everything better for everyone.
Yeah.
And yes, these apps were for profit, but they also, like, asking for a refund on $10 to $20 feels very petty at this point.
It's
And
so
it
American though. That's what sucks is I'm like, I know people are gonna do that, like 100%. That's such an
mhm.
American thing to do.
Yeah, well, it is what it is. So go support those of us who are better than that. Go help support those developers. And yeah, the money's already spent, right? So
Yeah.
yeah. In other news, M3 iMacs might be coming soon. And, like, where's the M2 Ultra? Why do we skip forward so much with these Apple Silicon chips?
Yeah, that was my like we'll get into it, but like that was my thought with reading this article is like there's so much like overlap and jumping around with these M series chips that it's just like it's kind of weird and maddening. Like on one hand, I can get like probably producing new chips, well, not new chips because the chips are made, but like new boards and everything for all of the Macs must be like somewhat hard, but they were doing it with Intel chips, so like maybe it's not that hard. I don't know. It's weird. But the big thing is they're talking about having a new M3 iMac coming out in about 6 months or so, which would sort of correspond with the release, the sort of proposed, uh, yeah, I suppose not proposed, but like the assumed release of the M3, a 15-inch MacBook Air, which seems weird to me because now we're encroaching on MacBook Pro territory because they had the same chips, except one has a fan and one doesn't. I don't know. There's like weird stuff. I don't really know what's happening, to be honest.
Yeah, it's just I guess I'm excited that we're going to get new iMacs. Like, that's cool. I
Sure.
hope they Apple don't you dare get rid of the colors. Like,
It says that
please.
they're going to keep the colors.
Okay,
I
good.
mean, this is a rumor, obviously, but
Thank
it
you,
says that
rumors,
the palettes are going to.
for,
For
for making
easing
sure
Dimitri's
this.
soul.
Yeah, they did mention the ports and stuff might shift around.
Uh huh.
I don't think this means that we're gonna get like a 27-inch again. Like, that's would be a separate thing. I don't think it would get an
Yeah.
M3 at that point. I would think it would get an M2 Pro or Max, or probably not
You'd
an
hope so.
Ultra, but maybe an Ultra. That would probably be better for the 27-inch. And yeah, I guess we might see an
Yep.
M3 iPad first because that makes sense.
Yeah, honestly, yeah. That's what happened to the M2, right?
Yeah, I think Apple declared, like, naming bankruptcy with the M series of chips.
Yeah.
It's basically
Yeah,
like
probably.
the A numbers got a little high for their taste, so they're like, we're gonna start off again at M. And now we're
M
starting
for
off an M
iPad.
again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it has Thunderbolt, right? The non Thunderbolt iPad does not, which is gonna be very
Yeah.
weird when the iPhone Pro. I guess that one might get an M3. So the iPhone.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, so we're on what, the A16 this year. So the
Yeah.
iPhone regular, the pedestrian model will get an A16 as an upgrade, and
Right.
then the iPhone Pro will get Thunderbolt, which means it will get an M2 or an M3, and
That'd be cool.
yeah, desktop class processor for once, I guess.
I mean,
I
they're
don't know
already
what counts as
desktop
desktop
class.
class nowadays.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I guess
It
desktop class
mentions
must mean
also
it should be able to melt something, right?
by with like power usage or what?
Yes.
Mm, then none of the Macs are really desktop class in that sense. They're just,
Come on, Apple. Get
sipping
back in it.
sipping 25 watts. Um, with the Mac Pro, they say that it will probably include the M2 Ultra. Uh, not really much of a change from I think what we've talked about before. Um, yeah, I don't know. Like I said, it's just like there seems to be a lot of overlap. But it could be that they're gonna more or less announce and or release these at about dub time. So got a few months to wait, but it's already March, so not that long.
Yeah, it definitely feels right around the corner. I think we will finally see the new Mac Pro this year. Otherwise, it's gonna. It feels like Apple may as well just let the product die for good at this point, because they did say, and they did re-tease that the Mac Pro is like the final one that's coming. So we'll see. Interesting that they did tease that, and there was no big iMac, I guess. Thinking back on it now, but Apple can do
Yeah,
anything at this point. Um,
yeah. I wonder if they just kind of shoehorn all of the iMacs in as we already have an iMac with Apple Silicon, so that counts, including
mhm.
that. I'm interested to know if they bring out an iMac Pro or like you said, if they just say, yeah, the 27-inch has a a Pro or a Max chip in it, and that's good enough. There's no need for an iMac Pro anymore, type of thing.
And maybe it starts at M2, M2 Pro, M2 Max. You get a
Mm-hmm.
full range of different power for the larger screen, right?
Right. Yeah.
Do you think the Mac Studio is filling the hole of the Mini Mac Pro that was heavily rumored prior to all this?
I think so. I think the only thing that I can think of that is would be beneficial for a full size Mac Pro is expandability, right? In the
Mm-hmm.
sense of like PCIe, like I think if you're baller enough, you can buy yourself an 8 terabyte SSD and call it good, probably. But you can't, you can't. I think probably the biggest thing that I can think of are like audio engineers where they have some sort of sound PCIe cards where they need the expandability, so they're sort of stuck on this 2019, 2018, whatever Mac Pro if they want to use Apple products. So there is a hole to be filled, but I think the hole is very niche, and that's what's hard. Where it would be cool to be able to throw in another GPU or something, uh, but like I don't know.
And then I have one more thought that has been tickling me. Last week we discussed these compute units which may be coming.
Hmm.
Do you think the compute units may be like the Afterburner card or a successor to the Afterburner card itself?
Yeah, I could see that, like as like an FPGA for some
Mm-hmm.
specific task or whatever. Yeah, I could see that. That'd be really cool. Um, I mean, I guess it's like the Mac Pro is always a niche product for people with niche needs, so it doesn't seem out of the question that
Mm-hmm.
they keep it running. I think for the majority of people, yeah, the Mac Studio has fulfilled that need, but there are people that do need, at the very least, the PCIe expandability, and memory expandability and storage would be nice too. But I think the biggest thing is just PCIe.
Yeah, that makes sense. This week's episode of Code Completion is once again brought to you by Not Pho. Tired of eating the same old meals time and time again? Consider Vietnamese food. You might already know pho, but there are tons of other flavors specific to Vietnamese cuisine that are sadly not well known around the world. This includes everything from sandwiches like banh mi, rice plates like com tam, and even deliciously savory crepes known as banh xeo. That's where the app Not Pho comes in. It's a free-to-try app dedicated to teaching you more about the wonders behind Vietnamese cuisine, brought to life with colorful and interactive illustrations and animations. Learn how to make many classic Vietnamese flavors at home, but even if you don't cook, you'll know how to order like a pro the next time you visit your local Vietnamese restaurant. Recently new is version 1.2, which brought a brand new home screen to the app featuring a recipe of the week and a map of Vietnam, allowing you to start exploring recipes by region as well. Thanks again to Not Pho for sponsoring our show. Search for Not Pho, that's N-O-T space P-H-O on the App Store today to give it a try completely for free. So Spencer, I have a code completion tip for you. Say you are working on a PR, you made a ton of progress, but it took you a few days. And then you go to GitHub, you got it all approved and everything, and you go to the bottom and it says can't merge. There's like too many conflicts or whatever. So you're like, okay, you go back to your terminal, you git rebase main, and then hell, everything is not working. The conflicts are growing a mind of their own. You've hand grown an AI inside of your Git repo, and it's just not happy. There are many ways to kind of get around that situation, but what if I were to tell you there's a great way where you can basically tell Git, hey, let's just fast forward through all this merge conflicty stuff and just use what I wrote, because I'm obviously correct and no one else is. But that has a benefit, because if you go and look at the PR afterwards, it's only going to show you the things that you changed. So if you just outright deleted someone else's code, it'll show up in the PR, so you can then go ahead and fix that specific part. You can go ahead and rewrite those commits. And this is where rebasing with X theirs is really cool. So this is an option when you rebase, and it's what's called a merge strategy. So you type dash capital X and then lowercase theirs, like mine, yours, theirs, that kind of theirs. And that will go ahead and tell Git that while it's rebasing, to prefer their changes. And their, in this case, is your changes. Because rebasing is backwards and confusing. I don't know. I like to think of it as like taking a big X to their changes. Like, you don't want them. But basically it means it's going to keep your changes, even though theirs is referring to your branch, because main would be ours. And this has to do with like how you merge properly. Like, then it makes sense. But I don't know. This was invented by the people who made Git, and that should be more than enough explanation as to why it doesn't make sense. Long story short, just remember, if you want to like speed through a rebase, just use dash X theirs when you're rebasing, and that will just prefer your changes over other people's changes, and it will speed through all your commits. Now, if there's only like 3 commits on your branch, I would just go ahead and say do the proper like git rebase and just do the merge conflicts yourself. But if you have 50, this will kind of save you a whole ton of time. And worst case, if it does like make the wrong call, because sometimes merge conflicts do make the wrong call, because after all, 2 people edited the same file, that will 100% show up in the Git PR, because it's now your change. You actually actively deleted or replaced someone else's code at this point. And that's where rebases are really nice compared to merges. Merges will hide that in the Git PR, which is infuriating. Don't use Git merges. Use Git rebasing and use X theirs to make your life happy. This show brought to you by X theirs. And yeah, that's my rant on that.
That's cool. Yeah, there have definitely been times where like I do get a merge conflict and I'll open like, file merge or whatever, and it only opens one file, well, two versions of one file, and then I'm always just like hitting, left arrow, command D, left arrow, command D, and doing that over and over and over and over to make sure that I just get all of, one side's changes or whatever. So that would be very useful at times. It doesn't happen too often for me, but yeah, it's definitely been a pain in my side before.
Yep. So, to this week, we are bringing back our wonderful mini review corner segment, and that's because
Hey,
one/both of us have bought stuff. I think we ended up
yeah,
buying the same thing. Mine finally came in, and it came in these wonderful plastic bags, which makes it look like drugs or something. I don't know. Thanks, Nintendo. And I say thanks, Nintendo, because I bought this from the Nintendo online store. And I'm excited to show you what it is. But with that, I want to give a bit of a preface. So many, many months ago, I guess at this point, we had on Mini Review Corner a little Switch portable dock thingy called a Genki. And the reason why I bought the Genki was because Nintendo was not selling Switch docks. And they're like $80, even if they were selling them. But they're like none to be found anywhere. Thanks, chip shortage. Yeah, I chose to go with the Genki, and it seemed to work, except when I tried it fairly recently and at the end of December at my parents' house. Turns out it didn't like their TV for whatever reason.
yeah, that's weird.
Sorry, Genki, you have let me down. But while recently moving stuff around in my own home, notice that there's no giant TV there to my left anymore. That got moved to a room right across. I wanted a Switch dock, so I was like, I don't want to trust the Genki thing again. And I noticed Nintendo not only had Switch docks, they had refurbished Switch docks. And this is great because that means they're cheap. And by cheap, it means that they come in these plastic drug baggies. So I'm gonna live on screen rip this guy open and give you a live review. I'm actually cheating because I bought two, so this is the other one that I did not open yet. Saved it for the show. But yeah, this is a Nintendo Switch dock. And you might notice this is not the original Nintendo Switch dock. This is the OLED Switch dock, which I didn't know, but apparently works with the original Switch. And I can confirm that. The cool thing about the OLED Switch dock is if you were to open it up and peek at the back, you'll notice it has a LAN port, which I thought was really cool.
Yay.
Until I ran a Switch speed test with the LAN port, and I only got like 70 megabits, so yay.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I think I was getting 70 megabits on Wi-Fi, so yay.
Yeah, but it's
Lower
far more
latency?
stable. Yeah, I'd say so. I don't know where it is, but I have like a USB, like, semi, like official licensed by Nintendo USB to Ethernet dongle, and I think it's only 10100 too. So I don't think there's really any like official gigabit speed dock or like Ethernet dongle.
So thanks to Ubiquiti, I was able to verify that the cable that was plugged into the port was a gigabit port like interface. And I know it was because there's also another thing connected to that port, which is a 1000 interface. So that shows up differently. And fun fact, the Mac Studio, when it is powered off, shows up as a 1000 interface on networking ports. I think that's so that we can like auto wake it over the network. But it doesn't necessarily go at full 10 gigabit per second when it doesn't need to. It just kind of throttles down to 10 megabit per second, I guess. I'm not too sure.
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah, that's a thing. But yeah, so network speeds notwithstanding, it looks to be in as good condition as you would think a brand new product were, despite not being a brand new product. So I think that's cool. One downside of the fact that the inside here has a LAN port, it does not have the extra USB port on the inside. So you are now constrained to 2 USB ports. If you were not previously using it for the LAN port. So that's just something to keep in mind. But otherwise, yeah, cool.
Very cool.
As always, I want to personally thank everyone for listening in this week. Please be sure to follow us on mastodon.social at Code Completion to know when new episodes go live, and feel free to tweet at us if there's ever a topic you'd like for us to dig into. Most importantly, as a small podcast, please be sure to share this with your friends and family who are also interested in any part of the process of app development. It's your support that enables us to continue doing this, and we hope to grow a healthy community around everything we discuss. Once again, I want to give my thanks to Spencer, who's at Spencer C. Curtis, that's SpencerCurtis, for joining me this week. My name once again is Dimitri. You can find me at Dimitri Buñol, that's DimitriBouniol, and we'll see y'all next week. Bye.
Bye.
Do I spoil the whole Tears of the Kingdom art book to you?
No, please don't.
But I need someone to discuss it with.
No, not me. Can't be me. I'm a just wait it out. I've only got like what? April, May. Yeah, 2 months, man. Come on. I can do it.
When do you think we're going to get the next trailer?
Yeah, I don't know. I probably a couple weeks, maybe a month out from the release.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know. Does it need another? I mean, probably will get one, I guess, but I don't know if it needs another trailer.
Yeah, people are saying it's going to get a demo at PAX. So, I don't know what PAX is, but apparently that's when demos come out.
I don't know when it is.
Well-informed gamer over here.
Yes. Well versed in all things.
Hello, my fellow gamers.
That's right, yeah. March 23rd to 26th. Okay, so a few weeks. That'd be cool.
Yeah. There's a whole bunch of rumblings that the same sky area they keep on showing us is gonna be like the new plateau. So that's probably what's gonna be like playable. Is like, hey, you're on this new sandbox area, and if you fall to your doom, you just kind of warp back to the top and end up falling back to the island or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I've long, like, do you remember in Ocarina of Time, the Lost Woods, how like you go through the wrong exit and then you end up at the beginning? I've long like dreamed of a game that did the Lost Woods where it would like self-wrap on itself with like seamless transitions. Like, we have the technology to do that surely nowadays. Yes. And you have to actively Portal, like... Yeah, exactly. And you would have to actively like pay attention to your surroundings and the shape of the trees and all that to like find your way through. Cool. I think that would be like really, really neat. But yeah, you could do that with 3 dimensions too. Like if you fall, you just end up at the top and there's like so many layers. Yeah. I don't know where I'm going with this.
That'd be cool. Yeah, no. I think the thing that I'm like the most interested in is I saw like one screenshot and it was like a comparison between Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom in like the same location. It looks like the same. So I'm wondering like how they're going to make it, aside from like the sky stuff, how they're going to make the overworld unique to Breath of the Wild, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So, I, who have watched too many YouTube videos that all unfortunately declare we're not talking about spoilers. Come on, please. Someone talk about the spoilers. I need to get it off my chest. I have learned just enough Japanese to be able to read out like the very small amount of captions that it has, and I'm like, no. But in the non-spoilery stuff, people have compared like the same camera position because, of course, you can do that with Breath of the Wild. I don't know, modders are crazy. But they found out that the draw distance is a lot better. So in places where the rock formations kind of didn't load in all the way, like you can actually make them out properly, which is probably important if you're going to be flying around and seeing the whole shebang in one go, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's gonna be interesting. Maybe they'll set it up kind of like how, like, this is another element that all Zelda games, or almost all Zelda games, had that Breath of the Wild didn't really, is like a, excuse me, a light world and then a dark world version of the
Sure.
same thing. And like Ocarina of Time did it, where you have young Link and adult Link, and it's the same Hyrule, it's just different. So
Right,
maybe
that's
that can
true.
be an element that they explore, where all of Tears of the Kingdom is the adult Link timeline or the Dark World and A Link to the Past, where
Hmm.
the landmarks are the same, but the things that you're going to find in those landmarks are totally different, and
Yeah.
unexpected. So that might be like the key thing that's going to be different between the two games. I don't think Tears of the Kingdom itself is going to have like the dichotomy, because like it's already
Hmm.
probably a big enough game as is. But that could be very interesting how they explore that.
Yeah. I my first thought when I heard the title Tears of the Kingdom was like, aren't they called Sacred Tears in like the Sacred Realm from Skyward Sword?
I freaking hate those stupid sacred tears.
I know, dude. That was the
That was
worst
the
part of Skyward, the most stressful thing in like gaming history, dude.
seriously,
I
like, that
hated
was
those
not fun.
challenges.
And
Yeah,
freaking Twilight Princess started it off and it wasn't fun, and they just made them worse. And it was like, oh
that's true.
no.
Yeah,
I guess
at
they're
least you
like
didn't
trying to
have
do the
things like
collectathons of like, you need to get all the gold Skulltulas. Just, you have 10 seconds, and
oh
these things are gonna chase you with nerve wracking music, and it's just gonna be
yeah,
stress.
exactly. Like at least in Twilight Princess, it was like you had all the time in the world. Yeah, no. In Skyward Sword, it's just like a panic fest, dude. I hated that.
Seriously.
Like honestly, I probably would replay Skyward Sword on the Switch if it weren't for that. But I'm just like, I'm scarred, man. Emotional scars. I don't want to do that again.
It wasn't the controls that scarred you. It was the time limit on with the nerve wracking music of the things chasing you
For
last minute.
real. Yeah.
Oh man.
Obviously, you can tell I don't play horror games. That would not be fun. So, yeah.
Yeah. The other thing
Well,
I
we're
thought
almost
of when
there.
I
Oh,
saw those tiers was an anime called Ikitosen, which is not appropriate for any age, but I was 13 when I saw it, and that was not appropriate
for
then.
any age.
Um, but yeah, they have those same tiers everywhere, and that's the first thing I thought of, because my
Oh,
13-year-old brain was scarred. Um, so yeah, that's a thing. But
nice.
yeah, we'll see what happens. I think it's probably gonna be like Sage related. It makes sense. 7 is a auspicious Zelda number in that regard.
Indeed.
So it's
Yeah.
gonna be interesting. I wonder how they're gonna tell the story this time around. Is it gonna be like over narrated like Skyward Sword, or is it gonna be more like event driven, kind of like Ocarina of Time, where there's like little cutscenes? What do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting that in the last trailer there are like voice actors though for like Ganondorf and everything too. So like maybe there are sort of cutscene type things where people are actually like voice speaking and not just like text. Kind of like the memories. I don't know. It's a good question.
Can't wait. 2 more
Yeah.
months.
I know. That's the crazy thing too. It's like it's been like 5 years, dude. 2 months, we're almost there. We're yeah, it's super close. So that's the exciting part for me is there's not much time left to wait.
Yeah, and yeah, the time is gonna fly for me too, because I'm gonna be busy being a parent for the first time, and that's gonna be
Yay!
exciting. So I'm definitely not going to be naming my kid Link or Zelda. Who told you? But I may or may not be playing Zelda while holding a kid, hoping for it to to fall asleep, depending
Yep.
on what insane sleep schedule I end up with. So we'll see. Maybe I don't get to play at all, and this is just what's another few more months, right?
Yeah. And then I'll be the one just sitting here being like, Dimitri, I need to talk to you.
Oh, don't worry, I will
So.
spoil myself. I'm
Oh, okay, cool. Cool,
a
cool, cool,
loose
cool.
cannon in that regard. It's like I don't want to wait
Yeah, I
another week
know.
for the second episode of an anime to the light novels.
Oh, yeah, or like you need to play Tunic. Like you've watched speedruns of Tunic, but it's like it's a great game. You should play it.
But I watched the 100% already.
I know. I know.
uh,
It's yeah.
to live
I
vicariously through others.
I know. For like Elden Ring, I specifically was like, I know there's a lot of Elden Ring content on YouTube. I'm not gonna watch anything until I finish the game myself, and then I can, experience it through other people and how they, break the game. This morning or earlier today, I watched a 4-minute speed run of Elden Ring. The game took me like 120 hours to beat.
Like legitimately, like you're not trying to slow it down. It's just like it takes that long.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, and I just went through another playthrough. Well, I'm not quite done, but I beat it. I've almost beat it in 20 hours, and I've not done like a bunch of side stuff, but like
To be clear, I don't think the guy that did in 4 minutes did a bunch of side stuff either. Maybe he did one piece of side stuff that like accelerates the whole thing. I don't know.
Well, he does like an like insane glitch called zipping, where you basically just like you have to time something with an idle animation, and you just like zip forward like miles and miles, and so he's just like warping basically across the map to go to specific like cutscene planes, like dropping through the forest temple in Ocarina of Time, and you get to Ganondorf's room, like that kind of thing. Pretty crazy, but people can speedrun the game in about an hour, like not glitchless, I think, which is like insane.
That reminds me of like Super Swims and Wind Waker, where you just watch for 5 minutes the speedrunner going
Yeah.
on their controller for 5 full minutes, and you're like, this can't possibly be saving them time. And then out of nowhere, Link just go blah blah blah, and then you see all the islands zooming by.
Yeah, you're
he
like,
ends up in an
okay,
unloaded version of Island X, and it's just like, well, the adventure has started.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. It's like is like I've said this before, but it just like amazes me the people like the amount of dedication people have to like figuring out this stuff, and like, hey, let's figure out how fast I can move my control stick so I can go forwards and backwards, 30 times a second, so this super swim can go, you can reach maximum
and
speed.
accumulate negative velocity because the developers didn't think of negative velocity.
Crazy stuff, dude. It's nuts.
I guess if there are any game developers listening to us, you should absolutely use AI to build your games, because that encourages glitches.
Good for speedrunners.
And wonderful inopportune code to kind of creep its way in a non-obvious way. And hopefully most of your players will not like see it as a bug. And a few players will be able to abuse the hell out of it. Like, I'm always so surprised that most games just don't crash with any of these like super crazy things, and they just like handle it. That is the most surprising thing, in all honesty.
That's very true.
Because like the kind of abuse that these poor games get, especially with like arbitrary code execution depending on the angle you are facing being the instructions, like of course that's gonna go badly. But it's like, no, it's actually consistent. If you go here and you pick up this thing and then you like sidestep 3 times this way, you get the exact angle setup. It's like, well, okay, that's a thing.
Yeah. Or like using Paper Mario and Ocarina of Time to like using multiple game carts. It's like, holy crap, dude! How is that even like possible? Yeah.
Memory manipulation.
Crazy.
Does that count as a side channel attack?
Maybe. Memory manipulation. That'd be good.
Yeah. So, I guess you're only allowed to write bugs in your apps if you can add fun little Easter eggs like this, and don't let people's credit cards get stolen or something. Then everyone is
Yeah.
happy.
Yeah. Definitely not like a security issue when it's on a game console. Maybe. I don't know. The Switch stores your payment information, right?
I think so. Yeah. That may be. Well, I guess it's not someone else doing it, right? It's not like you can speedrun someone else's game. Well, maybe in
True.
like Smash. I don't know. That's kind of scary now that I think about it.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah. What was it? Oh, you linked me to Mother's Basement, which is a YouTube channel that talks about anime, and they have a wonderful segment of hottest trash anime. And there was one that I ended up watching where it was framed exactly like a speedrunning. A speedrunner was like
Oh,
playing a
nice. Like
game,
add the splits.
but yeah, but it was the director speedrunning the story of the anime, and it was like excellently portrayed. They got the whole summoning salt background music started and everything. That was
Oh,
like
nice.
chef's kiss
So
to
good.
that whole segment. I'm never gonna find that again because I watched like 100 Mother's Basements videos over the last 2 days.
my
Thank you, Spencer.
You're
But
you're welcome.
yeah, go check that out. I guess I'm not gonna link you. You're better off not being linked, I think.
Fair. Very fair.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Bye.